Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're walking straight into a crime scene. Or actually, maybe more accurately, a biological crime scene.
Yeah, right inside the human vascular system.
Exactly. We're looking at a medical mystery that it started emerging back in 2021. And frankly, the more I read through this research, the more it felt like I was reading a script for a sci-fi horror movie, not a pathology report.
It's certainly one of the most unsettling topics we've covered. We're dealing with a phenomenon that really challenges the standard rules of biology. And I think the most disturbing part isn't just what these things are, but the deafening silence from the mainstream medical establishment.
Yeah, the researcher's own words there, the deafening silence.
Exactly.
Now, we are talking about what people call the white clots, but as we're going to find out today, calling them clots is actually, it's kind of a misnomer. It's almost lazy labeling.
It really is.
And before we dive in, we need to set the parameters for you, the listener. We have a trilogy of papers here. They were released by a group called New Zealand Doctors Speaking Out with Science.
Right, and we need to be very clear about our stance on this source material.
Yes, absolutely. We are here to report on the findings in these papers. We aren't endorsing specific viewpoints, and we certainly aren't taking any political or medical sides. We are simply breaking down the data and the claims contained in these documents.
And it is a very comprehensive set of data. This isn't just a blog post. They've involved international laboratories on 3 different continents. They're using mass spectrometry, electron microscopy. They've approached this very systematically.
So our mission for this deep dive is to walk through the 3 specific pillars of their research. Morphology, which is the shape and structure, elemental chemistry, the actual composition, and proteomics, the molecular architecture.
Because when you stack those 3 pillars up, you realize we aren't dealing with normal biology anymore.
No, we're dealing with something the papers call a hybrid material.
That's the core tension of this whole mystery. The human body is apparently being forced to manufacture a structure that it simply doesn't have the tools to dismantle. It's building a prison for its own blood cells.
So let's set the stage. The year is 2021. The world is in the middle of the global vaccine rollout. And suddenly, embalmers, people who literally spend their entire lives dealing with the deceased, start seeing something they have never seen before.
And we really need to be specific about who is reporting this. The papers highlight very experienced professionals. Richard Hirschman in the U.S.
John O'Looney in the UK.
Right, and Major Tom Havland. These are people with decades of experience. They know exactly what death looks like, and they know what blood does when it stops moving.
Because usually a post-mortem blood clot is, well, it's basically like jelly, right?
Exactly. In pathology, we often refer to it as a chicken fat clot or a current jelly clot. It's red, it's gelatinous, and most importantly, it's very fragile.
You can't really pick it up.
No, if you grab it with tweezers, it just falls apart. It's essentially just a clump of red blood cells trapped in a very weak fibrin web. It makes a mess.
But starting in 2021, these embalmers started pulling out something totally different from the veins of the deceased.
They started retrieving these white, rubbery, fibrous structures. And retrieving is absolutely the right word because they have to physically pull them out.
Like pulling a cord.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These things have incredibly high tensile strength. You can stretch them and they snap back. They don't break.
And if you look at the photos included in the report, they aren't small. Some of these things are huge.
They are massive. And this brings us right into the first pillar of the research, morphology. The researchers term these structures anomalous intravascular casts.
Casts. Think about that word for a second, like a mold.
Exactly like a mold.
Mm.
When they are pulled out, they look almost like white, rubbery tree branches. And they mimic the vascular system perfectly because they have completely filled it. They branch off exactly where the veins branch off.
They're literally taking up the space where the blood is supposed to be flowing.
Right.
Now, I have to play the skeptic here, and the papers actually address this head on, which I appreciate. Could these just be, I don't know, weird post-mortem artifacts, like maybe the embalming fluid reacts with the blood in some novel way, or the body gets too cold?
That is the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
If these form after death, then they're just a strange curiosity for morticians. But if they form during life, they're a killer. And this is exactly where the experts found the smoking gun.
The lines of Zahn.
Yes, the lines of Zahn.
It sounds like a location in a fantasy novel, but it's a very specific pathological concept. Unpack that for us.
It is the definitive proof of timing. Think of it like tree rings or layers in sedimentary rock. When a thrombus, a clot, forms in a living person, the blood is actively rushing past it.
Okay.
And that rapid flow deposits platelets and fibrin in very distinct layers, layer upon layer upon layer.
So you absolutely need active circulation to create those lines. A beating heart.
Precisely. You cannot form lines of Zahn after death because the blood is static. It pools, it doesn't flow.
Right.
The fact that these white casts possess these distinct visible laminations proves unequivocally, according to the researchers, that these structures formed while the patient was alive.
That's horrifying. That means these people were walking around, going to work, maybe just feeling a little exhausted, while these rubbery branches were physically growing inside their arteries.
And effectively strangling their organs, yes. And there's another morphological detail that really matters here. They are white.
Because they don't have red blood cells.
Exactly. A normal clot is red because it traps red blood cells and platelets. These anomalous structures seem to actively exclude them. They're almost pure protein, totally stripped of the life-giving part of the blood.
So we've established that they're real, and the evidence shows they grow in the living. Let's move to the second pillar, the elemental chemistry. Because if they aren't made of red blood cells, what on earth is the body building them out of?
This is where the international labs came in. They used inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometry. Basically, they vaporized samples of these clots to look at their elemental fingerprint.
And the fingerprint was completely wrong.
It was bizarre. Two specific elements stood out in the data, sulfur and phosphorus.
Okay, let's break that down.
So, basic biology proteins are built from amino acids, and key amino acids contain sulfur. Sulfur is essentially the glue that holds normal protein structures together. In any normal blood clot, you expect a healthy, high amount of sulfur.
But in the white casts.
Deeply depleted. The sulfur counts were incredibly low. But the phosphorus, on the other hand,
Off the charts.
completely off the charts.
Now, help me out here. I know we have phosphorus in our bodies, it's in our bones, it's in our DNA, but finding massive levels of it in a rubbery blockage, in a vein, what does the paper imply that means?
In this specific context, the researchers argue that it points to a hybrid organic-inorganic matrix.
A hybrid organic-inorganic matrix? That sounds like we're describing a synthetic material, not human tissue.
It essentially means the structure has a carbon backbone, so it's organic in that very basic sense, but it's incorporating materials that make it behave almost like a polymer. The wildly high phosphorus to sulfur ratio suggests a synthetic-like quality.
So the body is being forced to build with the wrong materials.
It's like trying to build a log cabin, but instead of using wood and sap, your body is suddenly using concrete and rebar.
Which leads us perfectly into the third paper, and I think this is where we really see the mechanism of why these things are so incredibly deadly. Proteomics, the actual architecture of the protein.
Yes, this is where they analyze the fibrin itself. Fibrin is the normal protein mesh that makes a clot sticky. It's supposed to be there. But in these white clots, the fibrin is what they call non-canonical.
Meaning it's not following the rule book.
Exactly. Normal fibrin is composed of 3 chains, alpha, beta, and gamma. In a healthy human being, these exist a very nice, balanced 1-to-1-to-1 ratio. It's highly organized.
And in the white casts.
Absolute chaos. The ratio they found was 1-to-7-to-3.
Wow, so it's completely lopsided.
It's a mess. The molecular folding is just completely wrong. And because that ratio is so skewed, the resulting structure is much tighter, much tougher, and highly resistant to breaking down.
And the papers make a huge point of this. The real danger isn't just what is in the clot, it's what is missing from it.
Right. This is the critical insight of the entire deep dive. Plasminogen.
Let's explain plasminogen for the listener, because this is the key to the lethality.
Think of your body's clotting system like a construction site. When you get a cut, your body builds a wall, the clot, to stop the bleeding. But the body is incredibly smart. It knows that wall cannot stay there forever.
Because eventually the tissue heals and the blood needs to flow again.
Exactly. So when the body builds that fibrin wall, it intentionally buries a stick of dynamite inside the bricks.
And that dynamite is plasminogen.
Correct. When the wound is fully healed, the body lights the fuse. It converts that trapped plasminogen into plasmin, which is an enzyme that acts like a demolition crew. It dissolves the fibrin, the wall crumbles away, and normal blood flow resumes.
So every normal clot you've ever had came with a built-in self-destruct button?
Precisely. It's a vital safety mechanism. But these white anomalous casts, they have no dynamite.
None.
The mass spectrometry analysis showed they're almost completely void of plasminogen.
So the body builds them, but have absolutely no physiological way to ever take them down.
No natural mechanism at all.
Huh.
The researchers literally described them as being impervious to future demolition. Because the enzyme that is supposed to eat them, the plasmin, has nowhere to latch on. It can't penetrate the chaotic 1 to 7 to 3 fibrin structure.
Which perfectly explains the rubbery nature and why the embalmers are pulling out these massive foot-long structures. They just accumulate over time.
Right, it's an accumulation problem. They might start small, maybe on a microscopic level in the capillaries.
Right.
But because they never dissolve, they just sit there, continually collecting more aberrant fibrin. They grow and grow until they cast the entire vessel.
And the papers mention inflammatory markers being present too, so the body obviously knows something is wrong.
Oh, absolutely. The protein profile showed heavy markers of chronic inflammation. The immune system is screaming. It's actively trying to attack this foreign object.
But can't do anything.
It's like trying to scratch a diamond with your fingernail. Can't break down that hybrid matrix. So instead, the patient just suffers from systemic inflammation, profound exhaustion, and severe damage to the vessel walls.
Let's zoom out to the real-world consequences here. We've got these rubbery, inorganic, hybrid, indestructible casts growing inside people's veins. What is the clinical reality for the patient experiencing this?
Well, it's a plumbing issue at its core.
Mhm.
If you block the pipes, the house floods, so the water stops running. If these casts are forming in the microvasculature, the tiny capillaries, you get severe hypoxia, oxygen starvation at a cellular level.
Which would look like what to a doctor? Brain fog? Chronic fatigue?
Exactly. Unexplained fatigue, generalized organ dysfunction, cognitive decline. The tissues are quite literally slowly suffocating. But that cast forms in a major artery like the aorta or the carotid, and it grows large enough to completely block flow.
It's inconsistent with life.
Sudden death. And this is where the researchers begin to connect the dots to the excess mortality numbers we have been seeing globally since 2021. They argue that these indestructible casts provide a mechanistically coherent explanation for why so many healthy people are dying suddenly.
And this brings us to the elephant in the room, or as the papers put it, the silence in the room. The source material from the New Zealand doctors expresses intense frustration. They call it a deafening silence.
It is a very valid critique of the current scientific publishing process. Typically, when a totally novel pathological entity appears, something that has never been seen in the history of medicine, pathologists race to publish it.
Yeah, it's usually a fight for who gets the credit for the discovery.
Exactly. They want to name it, they want to own it. But here, despite worldwide reports from embalmers for years, and now these 3 highly technical mass spectrometry-backed papers, the major mainstream journals are not touching it.
The Lancet, the New England Journal of Medicine, nothing.
It is as if the topic has been entirely edited out of the mainstream medical discourse.
But why? I mean, based on the source material, if these things are physically real and we have the physical samples pulled from bodies, why ignore it?
The researchers suggest that acknowledging the existence of the clot inevitably forces the medical community to ask, what changed in 2021 to cause this?
Right.
And the answer to that question is politically and medically highly volatile.
Which brings us to the final part of our outline, the vaccine hypothesis. The New Zealand doctors aren't beating around the bush here.
No, they are quite direct. They point straight to the temporal correlation. The sudden appearance of these unique white casts correlates perfectly with the global rollout of the COVID-19 genetic vaccines.
But as we know, correlation isn't causation. How do the papers bridge that gap?
They bridge it by looking for a biological mechanism. And the mechanism they propose is the spike protein.
We've all heard about the spike protein for years now. How exactly does it connect to these rubbery white structures?
The hypothesis presented in the papers is that the spike protein, which the mRNA vaccines instruct your own body to manufacture, acts as a catalyst. We know from other independent research that the spike protein is amyloidogenic, meaning it inherently likes to form tough, misfolded structures.
Okay.
So the theory is that the circulating spike protein directly interferes with the normal fibrin folding process.
So the vaccine tells the body to make the spike protein, and the spike protein then intercepts and messes up the body's clotting mechanism.
Essentially, yes. And remember, the initial public health messaging was that the vaccine material would stay localized in the arm muscle. But we now know, based on biodistribution studies, that the lipid nanoparticles circulate systemically.
They go everywhere.
Everywhere. The endothelium, the actual lining of your blood vessels, takes up these instructions and becomes a factory for the spike protein.
So your veins themselves are producing the catalyst.
Exactly. And the researchers argue that the extreme unpredictability of this platform is the main danger. One person might produce a tiny bit of spike protein for a few days. Another person might produce a massive amount for months on end.
And if you happen to be the person producing massive amounts,
You are continuously flooding your vascular system with the exact agent that triggers the formation of these aberrant, indestructible clots.
the source material also heavily mentions the Bradford Hill criteria. For those who don't know, that sounds very official.
It is the gold standard in epidemiology for proving cause and effect. It's essentially a checklist. Is the association strong? Is the timing right? Does the cause come before the effect? Is it biologically plausible?
And the researchers say it meets the criteria.
They argue that if the medical community honestly and transparently applied the Bradford Hill criteria to the emergence of these white clots and the 2021 vaccine rollout, the causal link would be undeniable.
So they are calling for an immediate, urgent investigation.
Yes, they are emphatically stating that if the spike protein provokes these indestructible casts, it raises existential questions about the safety of any current or future genetic vaccine platform that relies on the body manufacturing a pathogenic protein.
It is incredibly heavy stuff. We're talking about a biological mechanism that creates a permanent, indestructible obstacle in the human bloodstream, and the mainstream medical community is largely just looking the other way.
And we have to remember, the data from the embalmers suggests that while the frequency of these clots might be fluctuating month to month, the phenomenon hasn't gone away. These casts are still being found.
So let's try to summarize this for you because we have covered some incredibly dense science today. According to these papers, we have a completely novel biological structure, the white clot.
Correct.
It possesses lines of Zahn, which definitively proves it grows in living patients, not after death.
Yes, it is not a post-mortem artifact.
Chemically, it's a bizarre hybrid with heavily depleted sulfur and massive amounts of phosphorus, making it almost synthetic or polymer-like in nature.
A hybrid organic-inorganic matrix.
And structurally, the fibrin folding is chaotic, and it is entirely missing plasminogen, which means the body has absolutely no way to ever dissolve it. It is permanent.
Making it a cumulative, ticking time bomb inside the vessels.
And the leading hypothesis from this specific research group is that the 2021 mRNA rollout and the resulting spike protein are the architects of this vascular nightmare.
That is the hypothesis that fits the extensive physical data they have presented.
You know, throughout this entire conversation, I've been thinking about the whole mystery aspect of it, but it really doesn't feel like a mystery in the sense that we don't have any clues. We have the clues, we have the bodies, we have the weapon.
We just lack the jury. The scientific community at large needs to step up and act as the jury. You cannot argue with physical evidence. You can debate statistical models. You can spin epidemiological narratives, but you absolutely cannot debate a 2-foot-long white rubbery cast that an embalmer just pulled out of a femoral artery.
It's physical matter.
It exists. It is real matter, and it demands an objective explanation.
Before we go, I want to leave the listener with a thought that really stuck with me from our notes. We focus a lot on the autopsies, we focus on the deceased, but you mentioned earlier that these things grow slowly over time. They accumulate.
Yes, that is the truly frightening part of this pathology.
If the mainstream medical community continues to actively ignore this hybrid material, how many people are walking around right now feeling just a little bit off, maybe a little short of breath, who have these things slowly knitting together in their veins at this very moment?
That is the ultimate question. And until the scientific establishment breaks the silence and investigates this openly, without any political fear, we won't know how to screen for them, and we won't know how to help them.
If you want to see the data yourself, the mass spectrometry charts, the electron microscope images, the actual photos of the casts pulled from the vessels, we highly recommend reading the raw papers from the New Zealand doctors speaking out with science. Don't just take our word for it. Look at the evidence.
Stay curious and look at the data.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.